This mean it's on? I got a red light. Does that mean I'm on? Okay. Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
Fatma, do you want to call up the roster for us? Take roll call since you have the roster in front of you.
Use my pronunciation, okay.
No worries.
Mike Lapine,
Present.
Michael Baker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicholas Sneed,
Present.
Anthony or Tony Mitchell. Christy Watchers. Cindy Potter,
Yes.
Dustin Hawkins. Jason Pollock.
Present.
Jeremy Green. Penny,
He's in excused today.
Steve Webb. Tim Geisner,
Here.
Timothy Plummer,
Present.
Tony Lanson,
He's
And-
absent.
and Trent. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I think what we've got, the number 324331, that's probably Dustin Hawkins, our city attorney. And I guess he's probably called in and stepped out real quick. And then also, Tony Lansing looks like he just is coming in the building. He's just getting set up.
Okay. So first thing on the agenda is the review and discussion of city attorney memorandum on time, place, and manner regulations for homeless camping. Nick?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've given you a staff report again, slightly modified from our last meeting. And before I go into detail on the staff report, kind of frame this up, what I thought I might do is to help us out is look at page 2 of the staff report, where we have a suggested schedule for developing the time, place, and manner regulations for camping and through this committee, and then bringing them to the city council for consideration. So what we're proposing today is to have a really good, productive meeting on the regulations. Then, because of the holiday, we're proposing to have a meeting on May 22nd. And then on June 5th, and then have a city council work session on June 12th. The idea here would be that we would make some pretty quick action on the draft ordinance. I've got some questions in the staff report that would hopefully get us there. I will preface the drafting the ordinance to say it's likely not going to be perfect. In other words, I think we may want to identify additional properties in the future or locations where camping may occur. But for purposes of getting the ordinance adopted and in effect reasonably soon, I think we want to include in the ordinance what we know today is that will work, with the understanding that this committee and the city council, as soon as you'd like, thereafter could amend the ordinance a second time to identify additional locations or other areas that camping may be located. With that said, flipping back to the first page of the staff report, the challenge at hand is that we need to adopt time, place, and manner regulations for camping of homeless individuals. The law requires that we reasonably accommodate those individuals in our community. Based on Tony Mitchell and some other information, we believe that that's 80 to 100 people. And I will point out that I did ask Tony Mitchell for the 2023 point in time homeless count numbers, and it was something absurd, like 36 individuals were counted. And so every year there's some problems with that time, place, and manner. But the prior year, they identified 80. In other words, we we didn't lose 50 people. If anything, we gained a few in our community. So that's why I'm identifying 80 to 100 people. And that establishes the reasonableness standard, what we need to accommodate in the community. With that said, got a couple questions for us to wrangle with. I'll just read them out, kind of give you a bigger picture of what we're trying to accomplish. So number one, should homeless camping in public right of way be avoided? Early on, we talked about maybe that's probably where we wanted camping to occur, but maybe it may be easier for us to avoid them. Second, where is homeless camping is to be allowed? And I've got a couple maps. There's two maps in your packet, and there's also it should be a third before you, a darker one. Okay. So one of the things that I was looking at before this meeting was, where does the city own property? And of those properties we own, could we allow camping thereon? So one of the questions today is where, and let's look at city property. Are there community partners that we could work with? Probably not appropriate for the ordinance quite yet. Is maybe we could look at partnering with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, for example. Maybe the Plateau Travel Center could be an option because it's a fairly large property. They do have some tribal members. It's somewhat close to town. I don't know. It needs a lot more work, but that's an example of a partner that we could work with. I did not put on the maps for our county staff. I did not put on the maps county property. But if that's something that county staff would like to move forward, I'm open to that. And then final question would be, would it be acceptable to allow camping in the riparian areas? And so I can go into that in a little bit greater detail. I know we do have some challenges with where they're camping today and so on and so forth. So these questions are trying to help us guide, or I should say fill in the blanks to the draft ordinance that's in the packet.
Dick, what does that mean, the riparian area?
It'll be like Willow Creek. Riparian would be it's a little bit different term. Instead of like in the creek, it's adjacent to the creek, right? Not directly in the waterway or where water would flow, but just outside of that area. You know. So with that, Lapine, Chair Lapine, would you anything to add before we kind of dig in?
I don't, anybody else?
Okay. Let's revisit the first question. Should homeless camping in public right of way be avoided? Staff was thinking that there is no perfect place for any camping. I mean, let's just be honest. There may be certain rights of way that may be more appropriate than others or acceptable than others. But if you were to think about, your downtown area, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of potential conflict with businesses and guests to our community. And then if you don't allow it there, then that pushes you more towards your residential neighborhoods. Could be even more conflict with that. We've seen that. So that spurred some thinking on to, well, maybe we shouldn't be allowing camping within right of way. Maybe we should just look at public property, city-owned property. And so let's just say, for example, that it wouldn't be our preference to allow camping on public right of way. And then we were able to find some public property to accommodate 80 to 100 individuals. Then you could reasonably say, like other cities have said, no camping is allowed on the right of way, but certain properties you can allow camping. That's thinking behind that.
Do we even being more specific than general? And last time we had this discussion, we were talking about avoiding areas such as schools, parks, places where kids play. I think we need to avoid our core business area as well. That right now is causing kind of a safety issue for some of our shop owners. So I like kind of what you brought up to me before about, I think it's still a right of way, but it's out of those areas that we're talking about.
Yeah. So, Baba, do you have, I don't know if you have this map. can you put it online? I know it's in the PDF is in the folder for the meeting on the CDD shared drive. But there you go. So tax lot 502, somewhat in the center of the map. That is the location of the Madras Homeless Service Center. And I went out and looked at the right of way. It'd be the 3rd Street right of way. It goes north and south. It's actually just west of tax lot 500. And I know Christy and I went out this morning and looked at, I think we actually drove on the little thumb there of tax lot 500. It would be a little bit further west, just to be clear for those that looked at this. So the thought here is that that is dedicated right away. It's already in the city limits. So you could allow, that block from the northern extent of tax lot 600 down to the bottom of 600 within that public right of way at 3rd Street. You could allow some camping there. So it's somewhat out of the way. It's not being used as a street right now. So temporarily or in the short term, you could use that. It's somewhat close to where many individuals are camping right now, called in Willow Creek. And so if you were to allow riparian camping in that kind of riparian area, not on private property, and you need to relocate them, you could relocate them to this 3rd Street right of way, which would be somewhat of a short distance for relocation. It's also close to the shelter and close to some other amenities. So Tony, look like you have a couple comments. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. For certain portions of streets. Yeah.
I can't hear whoever's talking.
Tony, go ahead and pull the mic right in front of you.
I couldn't hear a word.
It should be already on.
And that 3rd Street right away isn't paved or developed right now, so it's kind of nice to be set up right there and it's around, as Nick said, all right by the amenities they're using right now.
So where exactly are you looking?
So this is strip of, if you're looking at that map, it's almost dead center.
Right, I
So
see
it's
I
between-
see.
It's between the 500 and 600. It's like a very thin rectangle.
Okay. And then what's 100? Is that the
That would be-
Sonic?
That's correct.
Okay. And the 502 is gonna be where the shelter is?
Correct.
So you're looking at the 500,
500 is that big lot.
That's
Yeah.
actually ODOT's property,
right, so we can't use that, right?
not without their permission. That may be another partnership we pursue.
Could be worth it. So you're looking at the right away in between 500 and 600,
Yes.
and how big area is that?
It's bigger than the area they're using right now.
Okay. And are there trees and stuff back there?
Yeah, there's a few, not much. Mostly grass.
Okay. Cause I know they like using the trees and stuff to be shaded out during the hot weather.
Yes.
So we can't keep them down where they are now. That's not city property.
Well, according to the map that I'm looking at, it doesn't appear to be, although the city owns tax lot 603. 602 is privately held.
Okay.
And what's interesting is most of the other maps I've seen of the city, Willow Creek is actually not deeded land. I won't get into the law of Oregon water law and public waterways, but nonetheless.
There'd be an easier way to get in and out, for an emergency.
Good question. So you can see on tax lot 500, there's that kind of gray area. That's the gravel area just west of the North Y. And so I think we'd need to look at that a little bit more. But
Not really easy getting to where they are right now as it is.
perhaps there could be some light grading or something that you could make sure that ambulance or maybe a fire truck, something like that could get in there.
That would be good.
I can definitely look at that. Are we in agreement that we'd like to avoid the commercial core or commercial downtown?
Yeah,
Great.
And we're gonna need to find more than one site though, because as Anthony pointed out before, the camp that's down there now is primarily native and the other camps and them don't mesh for camping.
right.
Pardon my ignorance. Are you saying that the tribal members or Native American camp, they may not necessarily want to camp with those that aren't of the Native American? Is that generally what we're saying?
I can't hear who's talking, please.
Sorry. I've been talking to people in camp now for about the past 2 weeks and telling them that it's gonna have to get integrated to some extent, you know. And for the most part, the other individuals, other than people from the Warm Springs or other tribes affiliated, they don't stay there. I mean, you know, or at least not even for a long period of time. I think there's one guy that's been there consistent. But I mean, you can't have I don't know if that would be right to have just a native.
Can you put your mic a little bit closer?
I'm sorry, I keep leaning back.
Yeah, please stay, yeah.
I don't think it's right that we just have just a native camp, because I mean, that's the whole point. Part of this too is the community part of it, you know.
Come forward.
We can't, you know, we don't want the segregation part of this either, so.
Yeah, okay, so but I also think we need to be somewhat respectful of the need. I think that's part of the reasonableness standard baked into that. So,
If keeping in account how many other camps we have and the one down behind Sonic, is that that Third Street right away big enough to accommodate all of them?
I would say a lot of them.
Anthony, do you think so?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
To operationalize that, we would,
Because what I like about that space is when this shelter gets put up, it's not just gonna be the shelter, but offer resources. It'll make those resources centralized for everyone.
one of the,
The food bank, hopefully.
yeah, one of the things we could do is talk with ODOT, see if they'd be interested in giving us some of that land for purpose of the shelter. The way things are going right now and state transportation, that may be something they would kind of like to, some portion of that little upper thumb, if you will, they may be interested in giving that up with the understanding that the city would maintain it.
Set up a thumb right next to the 502.
Exactly.
That would be great.
Yeah.
But I still think we need to find another spot. Not everybody gets along with everybody. I'm sorry, who's talking?
Where do we go on the other side of town then, where, but I would think towards the other side of town, we'd want a camp, you know, if we are Yeah, truthfully, I don't think one camp isn't gonna, not everybody's gonna go camp in one spot, you know what I mean?
Uh,
No,
I agree with that. Fatma, could you bring up map 202?
but you don't want it out too far. You still want it by some services, at least grocery stores or whatever down the road.
Yes, and Cindy, I think you're kind of coming quickly to my same conclusion, which is this map of city property, you can see very clearly along Willow Creek, we have some park property. And those are some of the parks that we would need to avoid or likely want to avoid.
Yes,
Although there are some camps in the riparian area, that's one of the reasons why I asked the question that I did. Do we want to allow some riparian camping? Because there isn't a whole lot of alternatives. And my sense is from the committee that Sahali Park is off limits. Probably the police station, city hall, and I would also include the county courthouse is kind of off limits. So beyond that, you have very small neighborhood parks,
yeah,
which is likely going to create conflict.
Yes.
So we do have some other property, but you know, you can see up by the city's south, on the southeast side or the bottom right, you know, you have the city's wastewater treatment plant. That's just too far out. So, Mayor Lapine, one of the things that, I think we should do is, do some more research on where the camps are right now near, call it 9th and 10th along Willow Creek to see, what the ownership of that general area is.
Okay.
If it's public, needed, not deeded land to either, you know, some private party, then that might be something to look at. And then, a third option would be there's some additional land west of the North Y, that's the large rectangular pieces. Fatma, maybe you can put the mouse around the city's B Street Public Works properties. North. Yeah. Left. Left. Yeah, it's right there. So, on the north side of those public works properties is the creek. There's also land, it's not per se in the creek. We could identify some of the,
Where they're at now.
say again?
Mean where they're at now.
I don't know if they're exactly on city property. It's not, and one of the things that, the city is gonna propose in an upcoming, Oregon Office of Emergency Grant is to fence our B Street wastewater lift station. As part of that, we were gonna try to fence some of the property so that if you had camping down there, they could be within a defined area. If we can't get the funding for that, then we would likely need to put up some fence there just because of the sensitivity of a lot of the facilities and equipment in that area.
Well, I know from when they had the goats out there, they weren't far from where we were at, where the goats.
Okay.
Saw 'em up there, we were at.
Chief Plummer, you haven't said much yet. What are your thoughts?
Back to the right of ways, my biggest concern would be emergency vehicle access. We start, I mean, I'm not opposed to right of way, as long as the right of way doesn't need to be utilized for just that. Thinking about fires, fire season, how if we get a right of way clogged up and we need to use that right of way to get around traffic problem, then we're gonna have to move people. And that's always harder to do than stop like a dumpster or a vehicle. So if considerations are given to any right of way, what is it access? What's on either end of it? What's on both sides of it? If there is some need for it, what kind of congestion problem is it gonna create in there?
Perhaps there's some way we can mark it to where they do line up their camps, they have to line it, they have to set their camps up in a way to lead a path or something.
It's entirely reasonable.
So Mayor Lapine, Tim Gassner weighing in on this. I think the pursuit of an encampment in the close proximity to where they're currently situated is probably the best proposal from my standpoint, because I don't think we want to operate under a presumption that the folks that are calling that place home are going to be compliant with relocating to another location. And I think that's a dangerous presumption. With respect to the concern about there being different ethnicities located there that are not going to get along with each other. Granted, I don't have a handle on all of the charges that are filed in Jefferson County, but I have a pretty good idea of, generally speaking, what's going on in the criminal justice system. We don't seem to have too many conflicts arising out of the current location that result in criminal charges, and certainly not as many as one might think. But I would be happy to be corrected if that's not actually the case.
That's comforting to hear, Tim. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can somebody put in their
Sorry.
speaker?
So the spot that they're in right now, the people that are there for the majority, and I mean, the great majority of them are happy where they're at. They have ways of insulating their tents to, I think one thing, if we do set that spot or something, or even a different spot, is then we set up guidelines for the tents and stuff, and then, to how they're built, or, so that way there's some conformity to the community itself. It gives ease of access. Everything's a little more straight line than, I mean, you walk through it now, it's a ramshackled mess. I mean, and all that needs to be straightened up in the process. But yeah, that community is happy where they're at. They really are in that spot.
Okay.
And that spot there is part of what we're talking about, or what you pointed out, Nick, right? In that kind of a triangle up there.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we can incorporate that.
Yeah.
So you-
I think staff would like to go out and do just a little more research, but I think that's a strong candidate at this point. So at our next meeting, what we could do is report back on the feasibility of that site.
So where they're currently, this is Sheriff Pollock, so where they're currently at is, in 603, right? On that, darker map. And-
Notwithstanding the survey, that's my understanding.
Yeah, so, I mean, my concern would be if we do move them, into that right of way between 500 and 600, the residents kind of to the west, if fire does break out, it's always gonna go up that hill. It has in the past, which puts that residence and that one above it in 800. So 1801 and 800 in jeopardy. And then if the wind shifts, it moves onto the new shelter that gets built. So I mean, at least if they're in 603, you know, we fought fires in that area before, so.
Yeah, the hardest obstacle for where they're at now in 603 is getting access and for rescues or or EMS calls. Not impossible because we've done it, but we've actually got injuries of staff from pulling people out of there.
So,
From my office standpoint, I think I mentioned it to you last time we were here, is I do have a side-by-side that can assist with that if necessary.
Talk a little louder, please.
This is Sheriff Pollock, so I do
Thank
have
you.
a side-by-side to assist with any kind of rescues out of 603 if need be. That sits in my office for things like this.
yeah, and to your point about the wildfire concern, either starting in the Third Street right away or adjacent to it and weather conditions, you know, affecting those campers. So something we could also do is do some treatment of that area if we need to, you know, cut the grass, you know, down and maybe remove some trees and things like that.
Put in sprinklers.
Bring in goats.
Things like that that can reduce, you know, the potential for wildfire spreading. Mr. Willett owns tax lot 600. I'm sure he'd be open to that, especially if we were more likely to keep people off his property.
What other access areas are there into 600 or 1800?
There aren't a whole lot. You can see on the map where you see gray or black, that's literally gravel or asphalt. So, behind Ahern's Market, where that road stops, the east-west road, so it's in the north side of 2600. The asphalt stops there at the corner, and then there's kind of a gravel road that goes up to the old homestead there.
And those roads are easily accessible with a four-wheel drive?
Yeah.
So our grass trucks can make it up there.
Yes. And then again, as you go down Third Street or the right of way that's dedicated for Third Street, that's certainly a little more rough. But
I've driven through all.
I'm sorry, what? You have to talk up louder, Tony,
can make
please.
it Through all those, but I mean, you know, in an ambulance or something of that nature, trying to wheel the gurney down there, yeah, that's gonna be a little rough. I know people have camped in those right of ways right there before. And there is up in 1900, I think there's 5 or 6 people camped up in 1900 too. So I don't know who owns that or.
But Mr. O'Mara's, no, he was in.
Oh, I see.
So is there any way to bulldoze a somewhat trail, dirt road down to where they're close to parking or camping now? I haven't been down there.
I mean, I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way.
I still don't see us driving an ambulance down there either way, and and I don't mind that. It's just where our people get injured is when they're unsteady ground and they're carrying somebody.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we have a wheel litter that if anybody thinks about it, can grab that, or the sheriff can bring this side by side, or there's other rescue techniques. The problem is when we get called there, it's not during the bright of day. It's usually when it's dark and you
Mhm.
can't see where you're going and you're carrying somebody. So the accommodations are never perfect when you're doing this. So.
No.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we should include the Third Street right away. I'll do some research on that on terms of access a little bit more.
Okay.
I'll also look at the city's called B Street Public Works property, which is 603, maybe 602 and 601. We'll look at those. And also coordinate with the Public Works Department.
Check with ODOT about that fund by west of 502
Yes.
and with the plateau and see if they would be partnered.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Hawkins, our city attorney, is there any additional questions that you or information you need from the committee to start drafting this ordinance or fill in the details? Maybe it's Jeremy Green. Jeremy, are you on the call today for the city attorney's office?
You're right.
Well, you better not send me a bill for today.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got some general parameters already laid out, some examples and other city ordinances. So we'll take an attempt to draft those in terms of the time of day. Usually it's 9 PM to about 7 AM is when camping is allowed. And then,
Can anyone hear me now?
yes.
Hello? Oh,
Hello.
okay. All right, so backing up to the place regulations. So generally most cities have been drafting these such that they state where camping cannot happen, and then by process of elimination, there's a reasonable amount of space for the homeless. What I've been hearing is it sounds like maybe it's going to be more efficient. For example, if you look at as they're stated now, there's prohibitions with regard to within 100 feet of any street in which it's lawful to travel above a particular speed. Based on what I'm hearing, maybe it just makes more sense to state specifically where camping is going to be permitted rather than stating where it can't be. And I don't know, I guess thoughts on that.
No, I think you're spot on. It seems to me, as I recall from the research that you sent me, that we're starting to form up something very similar to the Seaside. Seaside uses that approach where they say you can camp in these areas, but not in other areas.
So,
So
yeah,
Dustin,
I guess when we get these, go ahead.
what I can do is I'll give you some language in terms of describing the areas that would be allowed for camping.
Okay.
And then my question
All right,
to
so
you would be beyond that. So it's the time of day and then the definitions about camp facilities and campsites that you've already got drafted. Is what else do we need to discuss besides where it's allowed?
Well, you know, above the place regulations in 3.1, there are the time regulations. You know, most cities are having particular times when camping's permitted. I don't know how practical it's going to be to have people pack up their tents every day. You know, I guess that's maybe some input from local law enforcement on that one. A lot of cities do have the restrictions on time. I haven't really seen many just say, you know, there's camping's allowed 24/7 on these particular locations. So it's whether the proposed times that are currently listed are acceptable, I guess is something that we'd need to know. I know there's been some talk where people or some cities decide to tie those into dawn and dusk because of the time change, you know, the way that just to account for daylight savings and the natural, you know, turning of dark and night. Some cities have done dawn and dusk. Most have done specific times like we have there. So I guess we just need to know whether the committee is okay with those times or whether they want to have times. That's
Well-
something that would need to be discussed.
This is Cindy, and when you brought up the fact that having people move all the time is pretty difficult, especially if you have families that are out homeless and camping, to make them move constantly would be pretty tough, because like Tony said, a lot of them live there. That's their home.
I
So
think,
yeah, that's a practical, yeah, I mean, that's a practical consideration, and I don't know how many of these, the cities that ultimately adopt these, how much they actually enforce those time regulations. You see them in almost every ordinance, but that's just something that's crossed my mind is, how practical it will be to have everybody pack up their tents,
that's
you know,
exactly right, Dustin.
at,
And so I think
what
what
in
you're
the
seeing,
morning.
particularly in, like the city of Bend, they have within their ordinance, if there is a violation, they have specified process, or I should say, more of a supportive kind of process to help them move, refer them to certain agencies, things like that, instead of just a hard and fast.
Right, and you also notice that Bend PD is not helping them with that.
That's right.
Sounds like, and I've heard that the time requirement is requirement in this policy, but we're actually looking at drafting an ordinance that has zero enforcement or recognition of that time requirement. Did I hear that correctly?
I don't like the idea of having something that we're not prepared to enforce.
Why have it? It's like,
Exactly.
Right.
Well, and so I think that's really the question for us. Some cities have using this very specific time period of the day and frequency for relocating the camp. But if we're going to specify where just camping is outright allowed, maybe we do not need that.
Right, I would think time restriction might be like if you're allowing them to camp in a park or something awful like that, but I think if we're having designated camp space that's outside those areas that we're worried or targeting, I don't think really a time frame is required.
And if a time frame is required under the law, we could just simply state that it's allowed during the 24-hour period. So we're providing when it is allowed to camp and the time frame is 24 hours a day in that specified area.
sorry, Mike, again, and just to clarify, we're saying the specified area is just where they currently are or in other areas that we're looking at proposing as well?
I think we should just leave that out. Because then if you say, in these areas, camping is allowed 24 hours, okay, well, I'm gonna camp 24 hours there, but I'm gonna camp for 12 hours at Haley Park. So,
Yeah, just leave time out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because in other venues that have that, that's exactly what you see. You will see somebody remain somewhere for 72 hours because that's all that's allowed under ordinance. And then the next thing you know, 4 blocks later, you're gonna see the same vehicle, same tent, and they'll camp there for 72 hours and then they'll move again. I guess my question would be, in playing the devil's advocate, is are we changing the definition of what camping is? Because if I wanted to avoid paying taxes, utilities, I would just simply find a place to camp. And then I don't have to pay a fee to be there, like in a state park or a regular designated camping area. The political subdivision is going to bring me porta potties and they're going to pick up my trash. So I'm just kind of wondering, it's kind of going backwards a little bit on what the definition of camping is. What's the purpose of camping? Is it to establish permanent residency? Because listening over here, that's what those folks want. They want to live that way. That's their home. So as we start and we craft through these and an ordinance and we're looking at these places for these folks to be, what is our goal? Our goal, from what I understand, is to help these people move into productive citizens, find them the help that they need. But as been pointed out, they may not want help. They just want to live like this. So maybe that's too philosophical, but to make this approach. But I
Ponder these things all the time. It's
Talk louder, please.
I think I have a really bad microphone here.
You must.
The people down there, this is the way of life they know. So, I mean, going and telling them, hey, go get this service, go get this service, go do this and this, and you're gonna live a good life like we do. It's so alien and foreign, outside of the our community, if people are willing to come and pull up beside them, you know, and kind of show them how, you know, it's different that they know, you know, when changing their lives around. And again, it's a slow process. We're dealing with people that are, you know, 30, 40, 50 years homeless. Um, if that's the way of life, you know, that's what you're gonna lend yourself to, no matter how much help you get to get an apartment, a house, you know, someone puts you in a room, someone, you're gonna lend yourself to rate that to that, and those that you associate. So it's, in one sense, I think the community that we're talking about this here that we have, it's a little different than those that are transient. And those, you know, that are just putting up tents every, you know, couple days and then moving on, you know, somewhere else. We have those that are putting up tents for months and, you know, years at a time. And then there's those that do pack up. But if you change the hearts of the people down there, you've got to be able to sit on their level and work with them and work through it. It is much greater than what we're just trying to grasp to. You know, finding out where we put them in camp and, you know, where vehicles are going to be allowed and all that. That speaks to a whole different part of which I hope this, you know, lends to, this whole thing lends to is getting the community involved and helping them see it this way. Because unless they see it, there's no moving forward out of the box.
Thank you. And I didn't mean to open up that whole conversation going that direction, but I just was reading the proposed ordinance and what that looked like. And the traditional definition of camping was temporary, more based on recreation or some kind of hunting event. This is not what this is. This is not just camping. This is staying.
Also have, so we've had a young lady that some public health has been all working with. She's pregnant, she's down at the camp. She actually seek out services and she has her first assessment at Death Care Wednesday. And she's gonna go to resident treatment. Oh, wonderful. So one thing I appreciate about our health department is I know that they have staff that points out all the time that these are resources that are available. When you're ready, here are resources that are available. And apparently they see it and they take advantage of it. We have another gentleman, he's actually going out to the dojo Tuesdays and Thursdays fighting. His first cage fight is scheduled in September. So, you know, trying to turn that into a positive. Get him off the street and get him to. Excellent.
Dustin, based on this discussion, are you getting an understanding of what we're trying to accomplish in this ordinance?
Well, frankly, there's a couple people I haven't been able to hear particularly well.
Me neither.
But I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I said, frankly, there's a couple people I haven't been able to hear particularly well. So anything that's been said in the last 3 minutes, I can't speak to that.
Right, but in terms of identifying properties where we want to allow camping as an approach to developing this ordinance, do you have a decent understanding of the kind of framework for allowing camping?
Yeah, I think we covered that. We covered that, you know, earlier. So that, yeah, that's clear to me.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on that?
I don't think so. I just wanted to also affirm that we're, everyone's available on the 22nd for another meeting. That would be a week from today, and in so doing, you're probably not going to get a packet out in 2 to 3 days, but we'll do our best.
Christian and I will be at an EDCO luncheon at the River House that day. It starts at 11. I don't think we'd be back until about 3, maybe.
Yeah.
2-ish, maybe. 2:33. Yeah,
What if we did 3 o'clock?
I'm good with that.
Bob, can you help us, note that 22nd at 3 p.m.? Dustin, does that work for you?
Let me see, just a second.
Sheriff? Dr. Baker?
Skip out at 4 o'clock, so it's not what I mean.
Not a problem.
That's fine.
Mr. Plummer?
Good, thank you.
Clancy? You
I'll
good?
be up here.
Okay. Tim? 3 o'clock next week, good for you?
That works.
Cindy?
I'll make it work.
Thank you. Tony Mitchell, good to see you. Can you make it next week at 3?
On Monday, yes, sir.
All right, then let's meet again next week at 3 p.m. here at the same Bat Channel, same Bat Cave.
All right.
Nick? All right, then we'll go ahead and adjourn for the day at 2:52.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Nick,
Yes.
Nick? Hey,
Yes.
real quick, so we're picking up on manor regulations 3.3 on Monday.
Yes, we can. And I'll
Okay.
email you after this meeting. You and I can connect and start putting pen to paper as well.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to get through the manor regulations and the health and safety fee. That section 5, the campsite removal, just to give you a heads up on that, that's the minimum allowed under the statute. So even though the committee might wanted to talk about it, there's really not much that we can change there. I mean, that's the floor. There's an opportunity to do more than what's provided there, but there can't be any less protections than what's already provided in that section.
Understood. Okay, well, I'll connect with you later this week.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.